Well, now it is time for our Sunday political panel. For more, I'm joined by Ben Oquist from the Australia Institute and Emily Dye from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. Good afternoon to you both. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on.
Well, another busy week, but particularly today, this Ruby Princess saga, it's not going away and not going away anytime soon. Ben, today a criminal investigation has now been launched. It'll be led by the Homicide Squad. After everything that's happened, this would be warranted. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we do need such an investigation. There's talk of the 5,000 or 6,000 cases now in Australia. Some 10% of them of infections from coronavirus have emanated from this cruise ship, and there's been a lot of buck passing between the Commonwealth and the state government, and the criminal investigation rightly focuses on the cruise ship. But I think and that's needed and warranted. But of course, we've heard repeated claims and counterclaims from the federal government and the state government, and that needs clearing up too. And it's one of the reasons why a police investigation is good, but you also need the scrutiny that often parliaments can provide on governments, not on the executive. And I think it's a problem that Parliament's not sitting enough, and it's why we need some solution. Parliament does need to be sitting. It needs to be looking at who is to blame, providing that check, that scrutiny and accountability on government at this all-important moment. And if Parliament's not going to sit, then we need some kind of parliamentary committee oversight. The Australia Institute's been working with a group of retired judges who have come up with an idea based on the New Zealand model, where there is a select committee, a bipartisan select committee that was set up on a consensus model. It's chaired by the opposition leader in New Zealand, and it can provide that parliamentary oversight that's needed to look into issues like this one. We cannot let this health and economic crisis become a democratic crisis. A parliamentary democracy requires Parliament. Let's set something up that can scrutinise issues like this one.
Emily, were your thoughts? Do you agree with Ben that perhaps it's time for some sort of a parliamentary inquiry? We saw that the New South Wales Labor leader, in fact, come out today, and she has said that there should be a Royal Commission-like inquiry into what happened. What do you believe? What do you think?
I think that the Australian people have a right to be upset. They have a right to be angry and afraid. And people are presenting those feelings right now. But I don't think that justifies coming up with a scapegoat. And I think that's what's happening right now with the Ruby Princess. People want someone to blame for coronavirus, and they want someone to blame for these deaths. And so they're attacking the cruise ships. And yes, there have been a lot of cases that have come from the cruise ships, but that doesn't mean that we need to put them up and basically sacrifice them to the public and blame them. I think we need to work on figuring out solutions and less on trying to crucify people. I don't think anyone could have predicted this, and I don't think that the people that own the Ruby Princess and the cruise liner industry in general, could have predicted this.
No, it's certainly been an unprecedented few weeks, but it'll be very interesting to see how this Ruby Princess debacle does play out now. Let's move on, because we know that Parliament will be sitting this Wednesday to pass its $130 billion stimulus package. Ben, there's no doubt going to be debate over how the support should be delivered to businesses, to employees. Labor's calling for changes to be done through the Fair Work Commission to prevent any loopholes. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, it's good the government's come forward with such a big package. It is enormous. $130 billion is basically unprecedented, and they've been working with the unions. They've taken up the idea that the opposition has been putting forward to come up with it, and so that they deserve a big tick for that, because it is against many of their ideological principles. But the scheme does need to go further. Some 1.1 million casuals, for example, miss out. Also foreign migrant workers miss out. A lot of people are going to be left without support. The two biggest categories of casuals, retail trade and hospitality and accommodation services, some 60% of those casuals are women. So there's a lot of people missing out, and I heard Christian Porter talk about it today, that he was looking at that issue and wanting to fix it. And Tony Burke has pressed the issue home at a press conference today, so I think that is needed. But overall, I also don't think the government's language about snapping back after this is going to be sufficient, because recessions or even depressions, as we're getting close to potentially, take a long time to come out of. In 1990, for example, Australia had a recession, and it took some 10 years to get unemployment back down to 6% after it got to 11%. And I think those bigger picture issues are going to require the government to do more than this $130 billion package, as big as it is, and invest in a bigger role for government. And from every crisis does come opportunity. I think there is an opportunity to kind of slay some of those old ideological battles that says unions are bad, that tax cuts are the only way to growth, that somehow debt is always bad. We now know that it's not always bad, and build a kind of stronger, more resilient economy, one that doesn't, and not so much at the mercy of supply chains from China, where we have a stronger manufacturing base. We might have clean, cheap, renewable energy, more secure jobs, less insecure jobs. I think that's one of the other issues that this crisis has highlighted, that we've got too many insecure jobs. And I think from that crisis, after this initial bad bit, there will be an opportunity for government to rethink its role and to build, more healthcare, more childcare, those services that people have got used to now.
Absolutely, certainly a lot of opportunity. Emily, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this package. I mean, no doubt there's going to be a lot of debate on it when Parliament does sit, a skeleton Parliament sits on Wednesday. Does it go far enough, or has Ben outlined that there are a couple of lowlights in this package?
Yeah, so Ben is right. This stimulus package is huge. For context, we're now up to about $320 billion that have been proposed. And when people hear billions, I don't know about you, but my eyes glaze over. I'm like, what even is that? So for context, you could cancel income tax, the tax on profits, and capital gains tax for a year, and it would cost less than this package. So it is huge. And a lot of it is the government trying to pick who's getting the money, and people are getting left out, like Ben said. Casual workers are getting left out. We've got a lot of contractors and sole traders that are really struggling right now because they don't get the benefits that other workers get. And they're really missing out of these packages. Like, they can pull from their superannuation, but that's about it right now. And they're the ones that are struggling most. So I think that the government really needs to take a fine-tooth comb to this stimulus package and look at who's benefiting and who's not benefiting, and really work on hitting those really at-risk groups, because we're missing them. When we're putting all the money into pensioners who have a stable source of income, we're hurting the people that don't have a source of stable income right now.
Okay, we'll be watching Wednesday very closely for sure. Just want to discuss the on-the-spot fines this week. We've seen people, across the country being fined, here in New South Wales on the spot $1,000 for flouting social distancing rules. Ben, we've still seen a number of businesses or individuals still flouting these. There's still that small section of society, would you say, that are still not getting the message?
Well, sure. I think some people aren't getting the message, and it's important that the communication from governments has got clearer. To be fair to governments at both state and federal level, there were some communication issues to start with, and they have got clearer. So there's less excuse for people not to be hearing those messages. On the other hand, these are heavy-handed fines. Freedom of association, freedom of movement, they're the freedoms that we hold dear, and they're being trampled on in the interests of the wider community, in the interests of our health. So I do think there's also a responsibility on police to be reasonable in how they're handling these new fines and new rules. Again, it does point to the need for good parliamentary oversight and scrutiny when such big freedoms are being trampled. And I think a stronger role for Parliament in doing that is a good check on the executive, notwithstanding that people should abide by the rules. I heard somebody on the radio this afternoon who'd been out surfing, and he said, well, surfing is exercise, and I'm surfing with my family, and I think it's against both the spirit and the letter of the law to be admonished by the police. I thought he had a good point. So I do think there needs to be some common sense on both sides, strong communication that makes sense from the government is what will work.
Emily, your thoughts on this? I mean, we're just seeing some vision now of police, going through these parks and essentially asking people what they're doing there. But it has been good to see that it has been enforced this week.
I think we need to be very careful that this is going to backfire on us. We're working really hard on enforcing fines and this black and white letter of the law and focusing less on what is actually endangering people and what's not endangering people. I heard someone ask the other day, it's like, can I drive my car to make sure the battery doesn't go dead? Someone that would be alone in their own car, driving around the block. No, they're not going to a shopping center. No, they're not going to a medical center. But again, they're not really endangering anyone, but they would be in trouble under these fines. I think that the heavy-handed approach of the police is really going to direct people's attention more to avoiding fines and less to actually doing safe things. One of the biggest things I think that we've missed right now is the power of human ingenuity in this time. Human capital is huge in Australia. There's a lot of people with a lot of great ideas on how to spend their time, how to make money, how to boost the economy. And we're not letting them by having these really strict rules. By loosening those rules, by keeping the advisories, don't go within too close to another person. Be careful when you do go out. Keeping those advisories is very good and very important. But by having this black and white, this is okay, this isn't okay, you're stopping people from being creative and coming up with ideas to feed their families, really.
Well, I'm sure we've got months ahead, perhaps, of these shutdown measures. Ben Oquist and Emily Dye, appreciate you both coming on. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Janika. Thanks, Emily.